Okay, we are live. Hello, welcome to our weekly Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that I try to do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you are new here, welcome. And if you are returning here, welcome. So I am finally back in my home after being gone for about 3 months. And it's really great to be back. So I just appreciate you guys kind of holding down the fort while I've been out of town. That really means a lot to me. So thank you, Lorette. She says, "Hi, Dana. I'm glad you're back." Thank you. I am too. It's it's good to be here. Zachary says, "Well, hello, all. Life is a journey, changing my life." Kamami says bonjour. Crystal, welcome. Welcome, everybody. Elle, how is everybody doing? Anything new and exciting going on in your world? You guys having a good 2020 new year so far? It's hard to believe it's a brand new decade that we're entering. I heard somebody say the other day about writing checks or dating things. And I didn't even think about this until they said it, but they had said, make sure to write all 4 digits of the year, which makes sense because somebody can go in and alter it. So, for example, if you were going to put today's date, January 29th, you wouldn't write 1/29/20, you would write 1/29/2020 because somebody could come in and add an 18 to the end of the 20 or something else. So I thought that was kind of worth passing along. Jeanette's Regrets. Oh, that's an interesting name there. Jeanette says, "Hi, Dana. I just found your channel last week. I love your live streams and book clubs." Well, thank you. I'm so glad and welcome. Welcome. Rainbow Reiki Goddess says hello. I love that. Life is a Journey says 2020, year of clear vision. Yes, I'm with you. I feel like there's a lot of symbolism with the year 2020. And I feel like it is going to be a year where everything just kind of comes into focus for probably a lot of people, which is very exciting. And hopefully I'm one of those people as well. Nancy says, "I broke up with my narcissistic boyfriend 3 weeks ago." How are you doing today, Nancy? 3 weeks is still pretty fresh out. She says it hasn't been easy, to be honest. Yes, I know. The first, I don't know, the first hour, the first day, the first week, the first month is the hardest. It really, really is. So, but it sounds like you made a good decision and that you're strong enough to actually leave the relationship, which is a huge step in the right direction. And she says, "Today I am okay." Good for you. She says, "There are times I want to text him." What do you do? What helps? Okay. And then she says, "But then I think about how bad it was." Yes, I would agree. I think sometimes reminding ourselves of the pain, kind of playing that scenario through. Okay, if I text this person, then what? They're probably going to text back, might be kind of good for 5 minutes, maybe 5 days. Then it's going to just be chaos again. And just this person just only brings chaos and anxiety and struggle and strife into my life. And I don't need that. Yep. She says it's not worth it. He was controlling and manipulative. It was always my fault. Yeah. That kind of stuff is crazy making. And yeah, that's just not workable. So let me scroll up here. Kim asks, Dana, do you whiten your teeth? They are so white and pretty. Well, thank you. I have to say, I really feel like they look whiter on camera than they do in person. Um, I don't normally whiten them. I do, however, use whitening toothpaste. Arm& Hammer. Love that toothpaste. It's by far my favorite just because I like the texture of it. Um, yeah, that's some random trivia for you. Rainbow, Ricky Goddess says, I separated from the narcissist in my life about 2 days ago. And yes, so that sounds like I bet that wound is still pretty fresh. How are you doing being 2 days out? Changing My Life says 2020 is supposed to be my year to be an entrepreneur. Do you have any entrepreneurial goals, or is this just something that you were told? Rainbow Goddess says, I am not doing well. Yeah. 48 hours is pretty fresh out. Sebastian says, I feel there is no more possibility to meet normal women who respect men. Narcissism in modern women is too high. I'll hear again. Oh, too high nowadays. Well, Sebastian, I've heard just as many women say the same thing about men. And I think we all know that there's a wide range of people out there. And a big part of it is understanding what you're looking for and what you're not looking for. And having the clarity and the self-worth to wait for a person that does treat you the way that you want to be treated, and the communication skills to be able to express to them your boundaries, standards, and deal breakers. That's a really big thing. I think so many of us, after we've gotten tangled up with a toxic person or multiple toxic people, or just have been so profoundly hurt in the past, we tend to look for that perfect person that's always going to treat us in this almost like ideal way, that they're going to be there to help us heal, that they're going to never inadvertently cross our boundaries, that they're just going to be this perfect person for us. And that's not the case. When two people are being authentically themselves and they both show up that way, uh, it's, well, generally over time, when they show up that way, then there's going to be boundaries that are going to be crossed. Every relationship is going to have some difficulties, and it's whether or not both people have the communication skills in order to make it happen. It doesn't work if only you have it and she doesn't, or vice versa. So I know that you're feeling really bitter and jaded right now. You've gone through a lot. It's completely understandable how you feel. Uh, I would just encourage you to um, to not swear off all women, or to kind of get into that mindset where, all women are the problem, because it's not women. And just like it's not men, it's behavior. And that kind of behavior doesn't see a gender. It's just out there. Okay, let's see here. Marlena is saying, is anyone else having problems getting the video? It isn't reloading, or it isn't loading. She says, I've been trying for several minutes. Uh, I, I would encourage you to refresh, because I haven't heard that from anybody else on the chat. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Changing My Life says, my goal is to build an online business. I just need more say in who I am and what I do these days. I'm tired of the controlled life, especially being controlled by others. Yeah, makes sense. Well, I wish you all the best in building an online business. I hope you keep us posted. Nancy was saying that her ex made her think she was nuts. Yeah, they do that. It's a common strategy. If somebody doesn't want to own the truth, or if they have such a skewed understanding of boundaries, that anytime we try to set a boundary with the person that has no concept of healthy boundaries, in their mind, we're being irrational, unreasonable, crazy, nuts, you know, what have you, because it's just two very different mindsets. And that the boundaryless behavior isn't workable. And I think ending those types of relationships, it's a lot easier when we realize that that's just not workable behavior. And it's a Herculean effort to try to teach a person who really does not have an understanding of boundaries, to teach them what they are. Uh, Most people don't want to hear it. It just it frustrates us. It annoys them. It doesn't end well, kind of a thing. And especially people that are more on that narcissistic side of the spectrum, in their mind, it's, um, we're difficult, we're sensitive, they don't have the issue. They just don't have that self-awareness or that level of introspection to think about their part in things. So, but yeah, the gaslighting, the making a person think they're nuts is also really common. So having a very legitimate issue and then them denying it, that's crazy making. And that's one of the reasons we talk on this channel about making that our new gold standard of, you know what, I don't do crazy making. I don't do perpetual anguish or confusion in a relationship. Really, if a person has solid communication skills, then things should be able to be addressed and handled in a relatively short period of time with, you know, a conversation that's reasonable length. It doesn't need to get down to deflecting and denying and diverting and, shaming and blaming and silent treatment and all of that. All of that is it's ineffective, dysfunctional communication. And I think you'll find the more, if you're new here or if you're new to all of these concepts about narcissistic abuse, the more you get into the boundaries part of it all and examining that. Because if you've ever been tangled up with a person like this, whether they were a parent or a partner, there's damage that's been done. And odds are you're not even aware of the different ways that your boundaries and sense of self have been eroded. So um, going through this process of examining all of that is just so enlightening, because we're able to really do that work to make massive changes in our life and to have a healthy set of boundaries moving forward. Farah's journey says, overt narcissists are easy to leave, but covert narcissists seem much harder to detach from. Yes, I would agree, especially if they're kind of saying all the right things. This is why I think it's so important to look at behavior. If somebody's showing you that you're not a priority, that um, they're abusing, using, exploiting, lying, cheating, stealing, these kinds of things, if they just really don't have a moral compass, don't look at words, look at actions and make your decisions based off of that. So I've known quite a few people. I've dated quite a few people. Like I said, I've had friends, I just I've come across quite a few people that just do whatever they want to do and then talk a really good game. They say all the right things. They can act in all the right ways. But man, it's I think when you make that shift and you realize, man, without honesty and trust in a relationship and emotional safety, there's nothing there. Like you're having to start over at ground zero to try to rebuild that relationship. And that's going to take years. And most people that break that level of trust don't tend to understand that. And they get, especially if it's a pattern, they get frustrated and irritated. Like, hey, I said I'm sorry, but you need to get over it. You need to stop living in the past. Well, you know, um, I'm a big believer that it's not old issues that come up, it's unresolved issues. And which makes sense. If trust has been broken, it takes time to reestablish that. And that's something that a lot of times covert narcissists are great at talking the talk, but they tend to just get better at hiding what they're up to, and they don't tend to change in the long run. I think you can ask, I don't even know, there's probably quite a few people here on the chat tonight that have been tangled up with one. They thought their partner changed. Maybe their partner was even on their best behavior for a couple years. And then they were horrified to find out, oh no, actually they've, you know, been up to whatever they've been up to. They just got better at hiding it. So if you see the dysfunction for what it is, it's a lot easier to walk away and just stay away from these kinds of people. Because like I said, without honesty and trust and emotional safety, there's nothing there. There really is nothing there, because that's the foundation of a relationship. It's just like flour and eggs and sugar are the key ingredients for a cake. If you're missing that, then then what do you have? I don't know, like baking soda and water. Like it's not a lot, right? And it's definitely not going to give you a cake. So I guess see what's there and acknowledge what's not there. Sebastian, I'm glad that you brought this up. Because this was my concern about the direction that you were going, and I just didn't want to say anything. He says, I hate to be that misogynistic, and I hate to say that MGTOW are right, but everything in my life reminds me that this is the truth. This is my concern for men that get tangled up with really toxic women, and women that can go the same way, go to these extreme ends where men are the enemy, men are scum, men are pigs, this, that, men only want one thing from you. Whenever we're talking about a group of people in absolutes, we're not allowing room for individuality, I guess. And everybody's an individual. Even with narcissists, when we talk about narcissists, they're all people. They all come across in radically different ways. That's why when we talk about red flags, learning more about the red flags isn't going to keep you safe, because they all come across differently. Some are charming, some are not. Some are arrogant, some are not. Some are introverted, some are extroverted. Some are tall, some are short. Some are men, some are women. Some are, you know what I mean? There's too much variety out there. And groups that are on the more extreme, like MGTOW, like I would say more along the lines of like that third wave feminism, where it's kind of men are the problem. I would just, those groups can really cheat a person out of experiencing, being open to a lot of very positive people and a lot of positive experiences in life. And the appeal to these groups is that there's always a kernel of truth in everything, right? There's a kernel of truth to the flat earth information. That's why people believe in it. They don't believe in it just because for no reason. People get tangled up in these ideologies because there's some sort of kernel of truth to them, or that they're saying enough things that make sense. And with MGTOW, I think you have a lot of men who have had a lot of really bad experiences with women. My guess is there's probably a lot of those men that had abusive mothers, and probably didn't even realize it, frankly, because abuse, especially when men are involved, it really flies under the radar. So they've probably had a long-standing history of really difficult, domineering um, women, or have gone through a divorce where they were just soaked for everything. And there's a lot of pain there. So, you know, it's it can take some time to find a person that is for you, that is what you're looking for. Dating, I mean, my goodness, it really is. It's, there's a lot of fish in the sea, but there's like a lot of catfish and a lot of bottom feeders out there too. It's a process for both men and women, gay or straight. I mean, it's just a process. There's a lot of really not your kind of people out there. But the good news is the more clarity that you get with what's important to you and what you're looking for, the better that's just going to become your new standard, and the better that you're going to be able to articulate that. And it's sort of like putting in some search terms into Google. The more clarity you have, the better results are going to be. And it's a lot like dating. I think so many of us tend to be like, well, I'm just going to stay really vague, because what if, this one, I don't want to exclude anybody. I want to give everybody, what if I miss out on like the perfect person? But really knowing what's important for you and putting that in as important criteria will help to shrink the pool, and it'll help to give you some better experiences when you go forward with dating. We're at a very interesting time in society as far as kind of this next wave of understanding what are kind of just understanding, I guess, gender in general, but especially what are men's roles and what are women's roles. And I think a lot, the younger generation especially, it's not as cut and dry as it was for my parents or for my grandparents, or even really for my generation. So there's a lot of freedom that comes with that, with kind of figuring out, okay, I can fit into any role that I want to fit into as a woman or as a man, right? Guys can be stay-home dads, women can be CEOs. But with that can come a lot of confusion when you're going about dating. Same thing with paying on dates, and there's a lot of laws that tend to be more supportive of women than they are of men, child custody and these kinds of things. So that we're just at this shifting time in society. I think if any, I guess what I'm saying at the end of the day, the more clarity you have, it's important to find somebody that has that same mindset, the same morals and values as you, and to go slow, to go slow. And everything is easier to get into than it is to get out of. And that relationships, marriage especially, and it takes a while for people to become relaxed enough around a new person for them to be vulnerable enough to that you start seeing their authentic self, because everybody's tends to be so focused on trying to impress the other person or to leave a good impression, you know. um let's see here. Sebastian says making money is not the purpose of life. Yes, I agree, absolutely. I think you'll find that a lot of people agree with that. Xiao Yu, hello, welcome. I hope all is well for you. I believe you are in China, if I remember correctly. And I hope all is well as can be expected. Xiao Yu says, I recently discovered that I have dysmorphia, body dysmorphic disorder, And she says, I could really use some techniques to cope with it. It's starting to ruin my life. Let me write this down and gosh, hold on a second here. Let me get some pens. My little this of course is the only thing I can find right now is like the postage stamp size post-it notes. I don't even know why I have post-it notes this size. Okay. I will look up some specific techniques. I have a friend of mine who does a lot of work with people with body dysmorphia. And so I'll run some of these things past her and then I'll pass it along to you. Have you, I guess at this point in time, are you seeing anybody about this and kind of what's worked and what hasn't worked, if you don't mind sharing? Let's see. Jack, hi, says, he says his wife is getting mighty tired of his narcissistic fleas. I repeat negative self-talk almost daily, and I do a lot of blame and shame. When you're engaging in that kind of self-talk, are you able to catch it at the time? Like, are you aware that this is what's coming out of your mouth? And if so, what do you do next? So, and does she say anything to you when you're engaging in this kind of talk? One of the things that can help is if you can slow it down enough to realize that you're saying these things. And we oftentimes I hear people all the time say, I'm sure I do it too, and I'm just not even aware of it. We'll do things like this joking. Oh, I'm so stupid. Oh, um, I'm such an idiot. You know, these kinds of things. And we might even just make light of that and see it as there's no problem. But I forget who said it. It might have been Wayne Dyer, something along the lines of be careful what you say because you're listening. And or be careful what you say to yourself because you're listening. And that's so, so true. And if we're repeating these messages to ourselves, we're it's not helpful. Like we're reinforcing these limiting beliefs. And so if you can catch yourself and try visualizing it as like a CD disc. I know you know what a CD is. There's probably people on this chat that don't, but like an old CD disc or an old record, and taking a key and scratching it up, and then visualize overwriting on that a positive message. So Brian Tracy, who is a big guru with sales, he used to say with salespeople, he'd use the phrase cancel, cancel. So if you were saying stuff like, oh, I'm never going to get the sale, I'm not good enough, I'm not talented enough, and man, this other guy or gal's got it all, look at them, here I am barely just scraping by, I'm never going to get anywhere. To catch that and nip it in the bud and to say cancel, cancel, and then to repeat something positive over that. It might sound hokey or like, oh, okay, just a bunch of psychobabble or, whatnot, but it really does make a big difference. And it makes a big difference over time. When you realize, and if you can correct and overwrite that thinking with things that you do actually believe about yourself, not just kind of flowery affirmations that you don't believe, but picking things that are accurate. So if you're telling yourself, oh, I'm so stupid, I'm never going to get this figured out, being like, hey, you know what? You're not stupid. You're not stupid. You did, X, Y, and Z. You've figured out how to, write that term paper, or you figured out, there's lots of things that you know how to do. And just because you don't currently know how to do something doesn't mean you're stupid. It just means that you don't know how to do it at this point. And so really working with that language you're telling yourself, if you're telling yourself, oh, nobody likes me, I'm unlovable, then thinking, okay, well, how can I prove that wrong? I mean, in what ways am I lovable? And in what ways what compliments have I received, or what nourishing people have I had in my life? Once we do that, because so much, I know there's quite a few of you that have mentioned the book Atomic Habits, and I haven't read the book yet, but I've listened to probably 6 hours of talks by the author James Clear, and I just love everything he has to say. Just check him out. He is so powerful. Sebastian, that might be somebody else that you're interested. That's different, completely different area. He's very much, productivity and goals and moving forward and that kind of thing. But I think there's a lot of his work has to do with behavior and our own behavior. And so one of the things that he was saying was every choice you make is a vote on the kind of person that you want to become. And that behavior that we get so focused on behavior change, but it really needs to be about identity change. Because of that cognitive dissonance and cognitive resonance. With that cognitive dissonance, when our thoughts and actions don't line up, that's when we experience mental distress. And that mental distress is only resolved when either our thought changes to match our action or our action changes to match our thought. The core of that comes from our identity. So and we're continually dancing this dance, changing thoughts to match actions, because we all experience some degree of mental distress on a fairly regular basis, especially if we're looking to make a massive change in our life, especially this time of year, right? In January of a new year. So understanding that behavior change is identity change. And when we make these identity changes, so many other things just tend to fall into place. So I guess to come full circle here, Jack, that conversation that you're having with yourself about it, really engaging in that positive self-talk, is so vital, because it's about the identity. It's about who you are choosing to be. All of that self-talk, more often than not, that's old. That's old messages that you've heard from probably decades ago. It's not relevant to who you are today. Our future doesn't have to be tied into our past like that. That's kind of the benefit of being human, is we have that ability to think critically and to make decisions and to take a different path. So I know that you and your wife are so into personal growth and development that I think it's awesome that you guys can have these conversations together and hopefully move forward together in your understandings and all of that. Speculator says, I would like techniques on how to give myself permission to move on. Divorce papers were signed yesterday after a 28-month separation from a 25-year marriage. I'm now 65, feeling hopeful yet ambivalent, and I want him out of my head forever. One of the things that I have found with giving yourself permission in a more concrete way, it has to do with changing up your environment. It's signaling to your brain and kind of to the world that you're entering into this next chapter. So getting a makeover, even just coloring your hair, painting your nails, just a color that you wouldn't normally paint them. Something that's maybe symbolic to you. Maybe something that's like bright emerald green, that symbolizes growth and vitality. Moving around the furniture in your home is really powerful, especially if you're in the home that you were married in. So if you've been in that same home for a long period of time, just changing stuff up like that. It's amazing what a coat of paint can do, changing around the furniture, getting some slip covers, um, going through your closet, thinking about, okay, what items remind you of your ex and of being married, or just in general, what items around your house. And I know that can be expensive to do a whole massive overhaul, but thinking about there's going to be certain objects that are more, oh, kind of, I don't know, like energetically charged, for lack of a better term, that hold more memories than others. And taking those items, you don't have to donate them if you're not ready, but you can box them up or sack them up and put them in the garage or put them in a spare bedroom. Just get them out of your sight, making the space your own, making your body your own, making this next chapter of your life your own. And it can help to do some uh, kind of, I guess I'm a real big fan of symbolism, and I think it can help to do kind of like a cleansing type ceremony where you can write down, you could write a letter that you're never going to give to him, but just saying everything that you think and feel and getting all of your emotions out there, and then over the sink, or if you have a backyard, burning it. You could even have some friends over and make it a whole kind of letting go process. So those are some thoughts. Huffle Mom says, "Is it reasonable for me to be mad at my husband's covert narcissistic mother? When he's triggered, he'll say either that he didn't say it or that no one cares what he wants and it hurts." Um, are you upset with her because of you feel, or both of you feel that this is where he's picked up a lot of this behavior? If so, I mean, you feel how you feel. So yes, if he had a mother that was really invalidating and dismissive, and not even really, if he just had a mother who was at times dismissive and invalidating, that's still damaging. And it's okay to feel how you feel about that. Um, if As far as when he says, I think you'd have to give me an example. If he didn't say it, I'm not sure what you're referring to there, but if he says, "Oh, no one cares what he wants," and he's just, um, I guess first of all, I would try my best to not internalize that, because he's not speaking about, uh, that has nothing, that's his response, and it sounds like it's him shutting down communication, and slipping back into that child role of, "Oh, it's useless. Why do I even say anything?" Right? I'm not going to be heard. I'm not going to be listened to, and so I'm just going to just forget it, you know, and walk off, kind of a thing. There is a show. Um, Her website is called The Adult Chair, and I don't remember if her YouTube channel is called that or not. Her name is Michelle Shafton, and I absolutely love her work. And one of her concepts is about the adult chair and the child chair, and knowing which chair we're in at any given time, and knowing what we need to do in order to get back into that adult chair. When any of us are triggered, this happens to all of us, it's easy, and we tend to get knocked out of the adult chair and we go into the child chair. And that child chair tends to be all of the hurt. Oh, they don't like me. Oh, this will never change. It tends to be a lot of catastrophizing. It tends to be extreme. It tends to be a lot of avoidant behavior, a lot of anxious behavior. Oh my, it just tends to escalate very quickly. And it's oftentimes not, it's fear, it's a lot of fear-based behavior, and it tends to come from having really traumatic experiences when we were younger, and those are defense mechanisms. When as we age, I should say, we tend to take all of this unresolved business with us, and we don't even realize it. We just take it as absolute truth. We don't realize that we're behaving in, that we're getting knocked out of this adult chair and into the child chair. And for some people that have really gone through a lot, they never even kind of develop an adult chair. I know this is because I know you and Jack, you've been here forever. I know that's definitely not the case with you guys, but there's quite a few people out there that just never develop that level of maturity and self-awareness to where they have an adult chair, and they're just perpetually very immature. Everything about them is immature if they're on the extreme end of things. And I don't mean that in like a judgment standpoint. It's um, kind of immature and mature in terms of, I guess, more like communication and behavior, as far as getting our needs met. Because our behavior, if it's immature, it tends to be dysfunctional. We're trying to get our needs met in or we're being self-protective in the most immediate way possible. There isn't that long-term thinking like there is with more like mature or functional behavior. And so a way to do this, I think it really helps to just think about it in terms of, okay, which chair are you sitting in right now? Are you in the adult chair or are you in the child chair? And for Jack, to think about it too, when something comes up, when there is conflict or confrontation, or you're feeling invalidated, or that your feelings are just being dismissed, or that nobody's hearing you, to try to slow things down and ask yourself, okay, which chair am I sitting in right now? And odds are it's boom, it's being triggered right back in to that child with all of that dysfunctional communication in the household. If you're aware now, like, okay, I want to be in the adult chair. How do I get here? And oftentimes, especially with a partner like Huffle, when you're able to have this open, honest, sincere solutions communication, the vast majority of the time, to be able to say, you know what, I'm really having a hard time to stay in my adult chair right now. And, or this is how I'm feeling. I'm feeling like no one cares. And I'm feeling that I'm catastrophizing right now. And I'm thinking that nobody cares. Nobody's ever going to care, that what I'm saying isn't important. And I'm starting to feel really anxious, and it makes me want to just leave this relationship, or it makes me just want to not talk to you, or it makes me want to do everything but actually resolve and have a functional conversation about it. So the more clarity, Huffle, that you can have about kind of what's going on with him, and Jack, the more clarity that you can have about what's going on with you during these times as well, will help to bridge together that communication, even especially during those times of conflict and struggle and strife that all couples have. It's not about avoiding, it's not about avoiding those times. It's about being able to have the communication skills and behavior skills necessary in order to weather those times. And so it's just a kind of a different way of looking at it. I would be curious to know, I think if any couple out there could practice with those skills, it would be the two of you. And I would be curious to see, if you did do that, how that would go. So if you're comfortable, please let us know. Helpful, this is a great point. Says, I understand. When he reacts to his triggers, I feel like I get thrown physically into my own child chair. Absolutely. And that's what makes this process so difficult to break. Because that's what happens to everybody. Well, I shouldn't say everybody, all the time. but it happens to a lot of us when especially in the relationships that are the most significant to us. It's really difficult to stay in the adult chair when something happens, they get triggered, they're thrown into that child chair, and then we're now triggered back because they might be like, "Hey, nobody listens to me, nobody cares. I think I'm just gonna go. That's it. I'm just done." And then oh my gosh, now all of our fears of abandonment or unresolved baggage and unresolved business comes up, and now boom, now we're in the child chair. And then now there is no logical conversation that's happening. It's all um, panic, basically. So if we can at least realize, I'm feeling really panicked right now, or I'm feeling really upset, or I'm feeling, just identifying how you're feeling and at least able to express that to each other. Of, I love you so much. I'm really struggling to stay in the adult chair, or you know what? I feel like I'm in my child chair right now, and I just need to go for a walk, or I just need some time, or um, kind of whatever you think you might need to do. It's really powerful when you're able to see and to separate the adult chair from that child chair, and to realize that we all kind of slip in and out of both of them. I don't think there's anybody that's firmly planted in that adult chair. We all have, it's the part of life is working through. There's always going to be facets of ourselves that are going to continue to surface, we all have unresolved business. So it's just kind of riding those waves when they surface. Um, oh, thank you, Sable. Says, I actually noticed the session popped up on my recommended list on YouTube tonight. It's been a long time. And Dana, I'm sorry to hear you lost your pop. My heart is heavy for you. I'm sorry. Well, thank you. Yes, that was a shock. It all happened a lot quicker than any of us anticipated. But, I have to say I'm glad that I was able to be there for as long as I was. And there was a lot of beauty that came from our time as a family there. So I don't know. Life is not fair, but it's still good. Bonnie, thank you. That was the term I was looking for. She's talking about kind of perpetually immature as arrested development. Yes. Yep. There's all of these different kind of milestones that, different psychologists have discovered over the years. They have emotional milestones, you have mental milestones, you have physical milestones, you have, moral with morality milestones, interactions with others, and not everybody achieves them all. So some people really do kind of just stay locked in to a certain age. I'm sure you guys have seen people like that, where they're 45, but they're acting like they're 15, and they just stay perpetually that age. So let's hear. Let me scroll up here. Huffle says, he'll make a suggestion, talking about Jack, and if I say anything to suggest his suggestion wouldn't work, he'll explode with, nope, nope, nope. I didn't say anything. Oh, I see. So it's So it sounds like it's almost out of like sarcasm. Um, so he's it sounds like he's almost trying to, even though you've said, hey, this wouldn't work, right? Here's a suggestion, and he's almost running with that, and uh just kind of invalidating himself even more when you say that. Something that can help when you know a person's hot spots like that is, and okay, he's not going to hear uh, any criticism of, in certain areas, regardless of how constructive it's going to be. Now that you know that, then it can help to almost kind of take these moments as and to flip them around and be like, okay, and ask more information. So if he says, oh, I really feel that, my suggestion is that I don't know, we um, get all new windows in the house. And you think, oh, well, I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know if we can afford that. And then if he starts getting and that's an extreme example, but if he were to start getting defensive with that, then changing the approach. If you were to say, hey, I really feel like we should get all new windows in the house, to then become more curious about why he's thinking what he's thinking, instead of coming right out and kind of counteracting it. Okay, well, why do you think that we need new windows? Okay, that's an interesting idea. Any ideas on how we could go about affording that? Or how could we make that a possibility? And just seeing. And sometimes I think we all can fall into this, right? Like we all have really great ideas. And then when we kind of play them out a little bit, we're like, oh, actually, that maybe I haven't thought that through all the way. Or we have thought it through and it makes perfect sense to us. And then as we're explaining it, the other person's like, oh my gosh, I didn't see these other points that you mentioned. And then you move forward with it. So I think oftentimes coming from a place of curiosity is so much more uh, conducive to effective communication than shutting somebody down right away. Even the most outrageous idea that you're like, there's no way that's going to work, to just get curious about it and see what he says. Sometimes too, it helps to, if the decision doesn't involve you, like if the decision doesn't involve consequences that involve you, okay, like him getting a haircut, or him, it's different if you're married and it's like a financial decision, but if it's, something temporary or something that really only affects him, he, what have you, I don't know. Then to let it go and be like, okay, well, I'll be curious to see how that pans out. And to sincerely mean it, not mean it from like a sarcastic point of view, but, uh, you know, giving him the room to explore. So Huffle says, well, I guess I'm just not that great at being anything other than blunt. Well, it it takes practice. It's learning a different way of approaching things. And if you keep at it, and frankly, it can be, it's not like this weird manipulation tactic, or it's not really even a tactic. It's just a different approach in general with people, of trying to just understand where they're coming from. And when you do that, and especially when you release the need to have them do things a certain way, because that oftentimes when we're trying to control other people, that more often than not, it's coming from our own anxiety about the decisions that they're making. And so when we kind of realize why we're so intent on having things be a certain way, and this is why, and when we can take that pressure off of, boy, you know what? The consequences of his actions do not, or very mildly negatively impact me. So I don't need to be responsible for his decisions. Like he can make this decision and I can just kind of sit back and just say, boy, I really hope that, you know, that sounds interesting. I'll be curious to see how that works out for you. And it just takes the pressure off. It's amazing how much more freeing it is to just to give other people that space to be themselves and to not, this is coming from a place, I struggle with this. I really struggled with this when my dad was sick and when I was in Texas with a lot of my family, because we're all trying to be helpful, right? But it was kind of the too many cooks in the kitchen kind of a thing. And man, my brother, I was so impressed with how good he was with me because there were points where I was just getting so irrational and so um, controlling because I just wanted things to be done a certain way. And he was just so gracious and loving and calm, like 9.5 out of 10 times. It just, and his level of just pure acceptance of what I wanted to do was exactly what I needed. And it was so unexpected. Like, it was so weird. Our dynamic just changed. Um, it's always been good, but there's those moments where it was kind of like big sister, little brother kind of dynamic. And it just changed during that time there. And I just thought, my goodness, this is so inspirational for me. Like he just um, is so good at just rolling with so many chaotic things. And there was so much chaos during that time, and he just, he just didn't miss a beat. I was so impressed. That takes skill. Oh, I'm so glad. Kat says, I'm developing friendships with healthier people. I cannot thank you enough for all that I've learned from you and shared with others. Oh, I'm so glad because it's really just, I wish I could take a lot of credit for that, but I really can't because it's really just kind of reminding you of who you are. Right? It's helping you to unlearn so much of this garbage that all gets covered, that covers all of us. And so I'm glad that you're shedding all of those disempowering messages and behaviors that have accumulated over the years and that you're moving forward. That's really cool. Let's see here. Absolutely. UNA says you have neither the right nor the ability to control others as you would not wish to be controlled. Yes. Yep. And it's one thing to know it, and it's a different thing to actually live it in the moment when there's these high stress moments. But that's kind of the benefit of these really high stress moments is it allows us to see kind of where we are and what growth still needs to happen. So, it's an ever unfolding journey of self-awareness and others awareness and the combination of the two. And that's very true, Missouri Cowboy. He says, you know what? That said, it's not right for everyone to be with a parent when they are passing, and that is okay, as I was not there with my mother, and that was my choice. Yes, yes, absolutely. And Absolutely. It's important that we all know where our boundaries are with that. Even if a parent has been absolutely wonderful, it's still a lot to try to be there and during that whole process. It was a lot. I mean, it was a lot for my whole family. We got to the point where we were having um, family meetings on like a weekly basis and discussing like what was working, what wasn't working, kind of if we were stepping over boundaries because we had this house full of people. It's a two-bedroom house and it was full. There was at least 6 to 12 people there all the time, not including company that was coming over to visit and everything. It was chaos. And um boy, it's those times in life are difficult even with a fully functional family, but when you have a lot of unresolved business and people have their own ways of feeling or not feeling comfortable with communicating, it's just that much more difficult. And um, it was a challenge for us, but um, I'm so glad that we were able to talk about things as openly as possible, that we were comfortable enough to at least talk about some things, I should say, openly. Oh, wow. That's amazing, Kat. She says, after being housebound and agoraphobic for 7 years, I now attend pole dancing and salsa classes, which helps me to feel embodied and reclaim my sexuality. Well, good for you. I love that. And I love that you're reclaiming your sexuality for you in a way that is, you know, healthy and, um, yeah, that you're in control of that. That's wonderful. I think the reason I say that is I think there's so many survivors out there that want to reclaim their sexuality in order to be sexual with a new person, or they wait to reclaim their sexuality because they want to be sexual again. And I understand all of that. I really do. It's so much more powerful when we're taking control of that and like, you know what, I'm going to do things that make me feel like a sexual being or that make me feel comfortable in my own skin, even for me, even if nobody, even if I don't leave the house, like I'm just going to do this for me, even if I'm single, even if I'm not leaving the house, even if this is about me and it's not about somebody else. Okay, shall you? I know you had mentioned earlier on about your body dysmorphia and talking about looking in the mirror and continually finding flaws within yourself and that it's just exhausting. So, and I don't remember, did you mention, are you in therapy um, right now for that? And she says, the more I take photos and look in the mirror, the more it triggers my body dysmorphia. As long as I don't see my reflection, I'm fine. But then I'm tempted to look at my reflection. How long have you been struggling with this? Just out of curiosity. Changing my life said, I can't imagine myself reclaiming my sexuality. I am just fine being like this. I spent much of my life being quote unquote sexy. There is a great TED talk that I saw, oh, I don't remember, a couple months ago. And it was something along the lines of good sex isn't about knowing all of the right moves, or it's not knowing about what to do. And the whole topic of that TED talk was about um, good sex being that emotional. safety between two people, and both people being able to be vulnerable and present with each other and just experiencing each other in that moment. And I just absolutely loved her take on that. I agree completely. To me, that's what good sex is. It's not about having these, knowing the Kama Sutra, right? Frontwards and backwards. It's about being it's about being comfortable enough in your skin that to be vulnerable with another person. And so that's why I kind of backtracked a little bit when I was talking about feeling good about ourselves and being sexy, to say, actually, it's more about being comfortable. It's about being comfortable and in within ourselves, for ourselves, and whatever that might be. And, you know, it could be sexy, but it could also just be realize just loving your body, flaws and all. I mean, everybody, I remember hearing a quote, this might kind of speak to you too, shall you? I remember hearing or reading a quote from Cindy Crawford, who was a big supermodel, um, a couple decades ago. She's still stunningly beautiful, but she made the comment that even she doesn't look like Cindy Crawford when she wakes up in the morning. And I remember being a teenager and thinking this was shocking to me, because I didn't know that they, at the time, that they did Photoshop and that they did all of the, you know, that so much time and energy went into taking a great photo. And I guess the point of that is everybody's got issues with their body. And even Cindy Crawford doesn't wake up looking like Cindy Crawford. And I don't know, just I think part of this journey through this life is learning to truly love ourselves in a healthy way, not like an overinflated ego kind of way, not in a um, trying to prove our worth kind of way, but just realizing that you have value because you're alive and you're here, you know? Truth Seeker says, I find sex emotionally threatening. Well, and depending on, I mean, that statement right there, I guess, really speaks to me of, um, it sounds like there's a lot of fear there, that there's a lot of anxiety, that there's a long-standing history of sex being emotionally threatening, because if having that level of connection to another person has always led to hurt and pain, or has not always even, but has led to hurt and pain, then it's understandable that that having sex or feeling sexually attracted to another person would feel emotionally threatening. So, in this, I was talking to a friend earlier, and we were talking about dating and healing, and um, it's kind of this strange place in healing. Like there's a lot of healing that we can do on our own, that I think it's important that we do on our own. So we're not looking for somebody else to heal us, because that's a lot. That's kind of an impossible job for another person. But at the same time, healing, there's so much stuff that only tends to come up once we have that emotional investment in another person. And so if we're ever going to be in a relationship, there's only so much healing that we can do outside of the relationship. Then the next part of that is, if we're able to, um, you know, take our time to find a good partner, to really kind of just screen people out, right? And to really find somebody that there's that respect, there's dignity there, there's that open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication, there's that ability to have functional communication. All of that builds emotional safety in a relationship. And at that point in time, and this takes a while, and this ironically and kind of unfortunately will take times where there is conflict that comes up, where you guys don't see eye to eye, and that one or more people are knocked into that child chair, and they are triggered, and um but if both people have the communication skills necessary and the desire to have a functional relationship, or at least know what a functional relationship entails, and they're able to get back into that adult chair to where they're able to talk through these things in a solutions oriented way, then that's where these relationships can start feeling more emotionally safe. That's how emotional safety is built. It's through the difficult times. It's seeing how does a person handle frustration and stress and anger and not getting their way and being disagreed with, and being late and losing or winning, or just these more stressful um, periods in life. So that's when that emotional safety is built. It's a challenge because this stuff's not taught. And so what a lot of us tend to do is we don't know really what we should be looking for. And so we get into a relationship with somebody based off of, oh, they seem uh, the way that they seem, right? Which tends to be their best behavior, because we're all on our best behavior at first until we become comfortable enough to actually be seen for who we are. So when people are on their best behavior, we tend to think, oh, this is how they are. And then we move things along too quickly. Sex tends to happen too quickly. We tend to share deeply personal, uh, vulnerable things about ourselves. And then if that person leaves, or if we start seeing more of who they are, oh my gosh, this person has terrible road rage, or they start blaming, they don't handle delicate information in a delicate way. They're shaming or blaming or invalidation or arguing or what have you that's going on. It's um, we're going to be prone to linking up, oh, well, then dating equals pain, that there are no good women out there, that there are no good men out there. And but there's so many things in that approach and with us setting the pace that need to go, uh, that are involved in that process of just changing that whole dynamic. Okay, let's see. Let me Okay, let me scroll up here. Truth Seeker says, I don't feel like guys are honest until after sex. I I don't agree. Well, I mean, I don't agree with that, but there's a lot of men and women, probably, I don't know, probably more so men, out there that are looking for sex. But if people are more honest, if they're able to be honest about what they're looking for, that's one thing. But a lot of people, there's just a lot of shady people out there that'll tell you what you want to hear to get what they want. And this is why it's so important for us for not just us as women, but just us as people, men too, to set the pace, to be like, you know what, I don't want to have sex right out of the gate, because I want to be able to be appropriately emotionally invested in you, and I want to have this emotional safety there and that emotional connection. And um that takes time. And that's not how dating is approached by the vast majority of people. It tends to be, okay, by the third date, people are sleeping together. Um, and that, nobody knows who the other person is by the end of the third date. So just setting the pace and having getting to know that person in a variety of contexts. So not just going out for dinner or coffee, but go into an escape room. I think that's a great way to see a lot, like, how does a person handle stress? How do they handle working as a team? How do they um, you know, ha- handle frustration and anger and winning or losing? There's so many skills that can kind of behaviors that you can see from that. Asking about certain topics, uh, kind of seeing where they stand politically. If even if you're not a political person, just seeing their reaction to things like that and what their worldview is, can tell you a lot. You bring up a really great point. Changing My Life says, I'm working on the loving myself. I noticed when I sing I love myself part in the song by Dalla Dalla by Izzy, I don't mean it. And I flinch a little. I wouldn't have noticed it otherwise. Yes. So one of the interesting things with affirmations is to do that. So if you can write out a list of affirmations and kind of be mindful when you're saying them out loud, which ones tend to go down smoother than others? Because some of them can feel like they just literally get stuck in your throat, where like, I do not believe that at all. It's really interesting, the stuff that we struggle with saying out loud. And it's a weird kind of little mind brain hack, I guess, to see to see what your core beliefs are about who you are, about your identity, about what you think is possible, all of that. So, yeah. And then to start working on them. So if you're finding just exactly what you're doing. So if you're finding that you choke up when you're saying, I love myself, to then take some time to explore that. And it can also help to start proving to yourself, this is why you're lovable. These are things about you that are lovable. Uh, and to keep saying, hey, I love myself, and to see if those feelings, if your attitudes towards that start changing. Because there does come a point in time with affirmations like that, uh, where I get, it's just weird, where you'll look back, if you write all these down and you look back in 6 months from now or a year from now, and you're like, that's so wild that I actually had to write that down and spend all of this time saying it out loud and thinking about it and doing all of that, because there comes a time where it just becomes second nature and you can't even imagine doing anything different. Same thing with interacting with people in a different way, with kind of knowing the differences between functional and dysfunctional communication. At first, it's scary, it's intimidating, it seems like an awful lot of work. There's a lot of emotions that surface with it. There's frustration, there's anger. But then realizing, once you know what functional communication leads to and the peace that you have in your life, um, you realize that there's just nothing else. Like, there's just nothing there if that's not there. And same thing with boundaries and everything else. It just becomes second nature. Very true. Kat is talking to Jack and says, I only learned this after my 8-year relationship with a narcissist. I believe that when a lesson isn't learned the first time around, it returns to teach us. Yes. Yes, it absolutely does. And that's so it's weird. It's weird. I remember when I had this job um a couple of years ago when I was working as a psychiatric nurse, and I worked with, I don't even know how many people were on our floor. There was probably at least 50. And I I was a float nurse, so I would float between these 2 different teams, and so I would alternate meetings every week, and I would alternate patients, and, um, so I had this weird perspective of working with these 2 very, very different groups of people, and it was so interesting to sit in and just listen to how the issues that everybody had with just I don't know, kind of be a fly on the wall. Listen to these conversations, of issues what they had with each other, issues they had with the other team, um, how they perceived their day, how they perceived the work environment, everything. And that was such a weird experience because it was often so very different than how I perceived things. And it wasn't better or worse, it was just different. And how certain people kept getting, um, if they continually felt like they were being singled out, that they kind of saw everything through that lens, like everything was an attack on them. Or if somebody felt like they were being unappreciated, then that was the lens that they saw everything through. If they were frustrated with a coworker, then that coworker could do no right. They just saw everything as that coworker being frustrating, and it just really colored how they interacted with the world. And I think that so often that's how these things go, where um, if we're seeing the world in a certain way, then we're going to keep seeing it in that way. And the result of that is it seems like these lessons keep coming around, but it's more than that. It's how others are wanting to engage with us and how we're going about engaging with them. So much of this is it just is such a game changer when we understand functional boundaries and functional communication. It just is such a game changer because then it's so easy. Well, and I shouldn't say it's so easy. It takes a lot of time and a lot of practice, but it's so much easier to see dysfunction for what it is and to just kind of hop out of the way. Or when you see a person that's being triggered, to realize this person's being triggered, and um, this is this dynamic that's going on, and uh, I can't fix this. I can't reason with them. They're in their child chair right now, and so um, you know, I'm going to respond to this kind of as best as possible and stay in my adult chair. But with a lot of a lot of these lessons are resolved with learning functional boundaries and learning functional communication. So, okay, let's see. Yeah. Yeah, Jack, uh, I think a lot of people can relate to that. He says, I can freely admit that a lot of my disastrous dating life was partly due to me lining up to be exploited and not protecting myself. I'm still unpacking some of it. Yes. And I think there's quite a few of us out there that were in the same position and just didn't realize it at all. I mean, I didn't realize it either. I didn't realize the role that I was comfortable playing, um, which was that of, um, kind of the helper role. And I would say was some codependency there, kind of feeling like I didn't need to be needed so much, but it was more of I felt comfortable when I was needed. I felt like in order to keep people around, I had to give 150% in order for them to want to stay. And of course, um, that causes problems. It's something that I still work on, but it definitely caused problems in with a lot of the wrong people, you know? Um, but I didn't realize that I was doing that. I just thought, well, hey, I'm just being, a nice, kind, considerate person. I didn't see it as overgiving. I didn't see the imbalance that I continually felt the need to create. And so when a lot of these toxic people came on board, or when I came across them and they had these expectations that hey, basically, hey, I really want this imbalance. I need to I'm going to overtake of your time, your energy, your money, your emotions. And I was like, hey, this is great. I'm going to overgive. We're a good fit. I didn't realize that was going on. And had anybody even told me that was the case, I don't even know if I would have seen it as such, and I probably would have gotten really defensive. But I think there's a lot of us that tend to fall into that kind of ingratiating type role, and it can be fear of abandonment, can can be there. It can just be we don't know how. If we're struggling with seeing our own value and worth, then we think, I need to keep being nice. I need to keep over giving in order to get this other person to stay because who I am isn't enough. Because I'm somehow not lovable on my own. I don't bring enough value. And seeing this, it can really help because it's like, oh my gosh, one of the big insights that I had in my healing process was not only that was that dynamic, this imbalance that I had with so many toxic people, it was imbalances I had with everybody. It was just more significantly more like undeniably pronounced with somebody that was really pathological. And that's when it brought it to my attention because I kept thinking, like, how did I get here? What's wrong? Am I a magnet for these kinds of people? And then slowly realizing, oh my gosh, no, this is more of what's going on. It's man, it's wild. The the messages that we pick up and the roles that we all tend to feel comfortable in and the way that we interact with others. It's just really interesting stuff. Ricky, hi, says, I read somewhere that narcissists create borderlines. Yeah. I've never heard it put that way, but that is, I would say, probably very accurate. Borderline personality disorder tends to be, one of the primary trait. Well, some of the primary traits are, um, fears, like significant fears of abandonment, um, unstable sense of self, unstable self-image, um, kind of chronic need for validation. There's a lot of very black or white thinking, like a lot of very extreme thinking. Uh, Either you love me or you hate me. Either I love you or I hate you. Like there's not a lot of gray area there. And that kind of level of dysregulation tends to come from a parent, one or more parents who didn't create a sense of safety and stability for that child. So that child grew up with this uh, kind of anxious, ambivalent attachment and carried that with them, like we all do, because we all are our own baseline for normal, right? So we don't realize there's anything wrong, or we don't realize the degree to which things are imbalanced within us, carry that into adulthood, into our relationships with as adults. So yes, the kind of having that narcissistic home environment where you have a parent who's emotionally unavailable, and this can happen for a wide variety of reasons. It can be from a person who is a narcissist, or a sociopath, or somebody that really lacks empathy, lacks remorse, lacks the ability to validate their child, or it can be a parent that it's emotionally unavailable for any number of reasons: addiction, alcoholism, severe depression, untreated mental illness, where that parent is, or just deep dysfunction in general, where you've got the parent treating the child like the parent. Um, they've switched roles. The parents made the child the adult, and the parent has become the child. So there's a lot of different ways that can go. The dance between those on more of the narcissistic side of the spectrum and those that are more on the borderline side of the spectrum is probably the most intense dynamic, because the narcissist will you I heard somewhere, and it's so sick, but it's so true. Something along the lines of a borderline or person with borderline personality disorder. Borderline is a narcissist's favorite snack, to put it simply. And that's so true because they really get off on that push and pull of uh the they it's so much intensity in that relationship with a person with borderline personality disorder and with a narcissist. So that narcissist is running really hot or cold. When they pull away and they start running cold, the person with borderline personality tends to freak out and be in the scramble of, oh no, um, everything was safe and secure, and I was finally getting this love and affection and emotional stability and security, and then you pull it away, and I need to do everything in my power to get it back. And then they double up on trying to win this person's attention or affection back. And it becomes so intense, this back and forth. These are the types of relationships that tend to lead to murder, frankly, or murder suicide, because the level of intensity can reach this fevered pitch because the narcissist is continually poking and prodding, especially if they're sadistic, poking and prodding at that borderline, their wounds, threatening to leave, threatening divorce, planting seeds of jealousy, doing all of these things, causing kind of just hysteria in their partner, because it makes the narcissist feel significant to know that they can cause that, because neither person really has a solid understanding of what a healthy connection is, and narcissists don't care. Whereas a person with borderline personality disorder, there's a very solid chance that they want something real and they want something stable. More often than not, without intensive therapy, they don't know how to have that. They only know how the only skill set they really have with engaging with others is through a lot of dysfunctional communication and dysfunctional behavior, and then increasing the volume on both until the other person gives them what they want. So it's, um, yeah. And when you've got a person, there's a lot of people that might not, when you've got a person that's running really hot or cold, hot and cold, excuse me, and they're doing that push pull, and it's so confusing. Even if a person doesn't have borderline personality disorder, it's if they don't have a solid sense of like their boundaries or standards, their deal breakers, what is workable in a relationship and what is not. And the vast majority of people don't have that because this stuff's not taught. So if they get tangled up with a manipulative person who's running really hot or cold, they're going to be in this mad scramble to try to keep that stability in their life. And there's a good chance that they're going to be misdiagnosed with borderline personality disorder when really, no, they were just involved with a really manipulative, crazy making person and just didn't, you know, just had no clue. Just was not on their radar that this existed, and they were going through this relationship with the understanding of, everybody, uh, everybody who's married wants to live happily ever after, or they just, you tend to kind of, I think a lot of normal, decent people tend to think that other people are normal, decent people, and that we all have kind of the same wants and needs, and that's not true. That's a lie that's continue to be sold downstream at all levels of life and society and education and all of it. Let's see here. So let me scroll up. Scrolling. Oh, thank you. Kuntane Mom says, welcome back, Dana. I missed you. Well, thank you. It's good to be back. I missed you guys too. I really did. It's amazing how like what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of disrupted my life is without the stability of these live streams. I'm like, what day is it? What's going on? What time? I'm completely lost. So weird. Yes, that's a good way to put it. Truth Seeker says yes. Narcissists like borderline emotional fireworks. Yep. Oh, hi, Rob. He says, well, my goodness, there you are. Yes, I am back. Thank you guys. Again, thank you. Let me just take a moment. Thank you guys so much. All the admins, everybody that's a regular on here for just being there and supporting each other and keeping this going as we were kind of getting through a really difficult time. I just really appreciate it. Okay, let's see. Yep. Changing My Life says, yes, I was called selfish over and over again and told I didn't care. So I did everything to prove that I wasn't selfish, and that standard kept moving. So I kept moving as far opposite as I could, doing too much. Yes. And this is, that kind of behavior when either the person is being intentionally manipulative or they're being unintentionally manipulative. Either way you dice it, it's a problem. Because what's missing there is that functional communication. So, or a functional understanding of boundaries. That's the thing with I guess with all of this is, um, functional communication only goes so far. If a person doesn't have a functional understanding of appropriate boundaries of where we start and end and where other people start and end, it's going to be that continual blurring of boundaries. And that's why it's so important that each of us know where our boundaries start and end, and know when those boundaries have been crossed. That's one of the benefits of having emotion, is when we when we're feeling frustrated, angry, upset, irritated, what have you, odds are a boundary's been crossed. But other people don't know where our boundaries are unless we make them known. And even then, they might not care, and that's their prerogative. So then it's up to us to figure out, okay, well, then what are we going to do? If this is a boundary for me and this other person wants to keep fighting with me about they don't like my boundary, then it's time for me to do something different. But it's impossible for us to hold our boundaries if we don't know where they are and if we don't know when they've been crossed. So the good news is a lot of this stuff, like I was talking about before, I really do feel these are just basic survival skills that are hardwired into every single human being. And we're just not taught. We're taught the opposite. We're not taught how to honor that ability to be self-protective and to understand that your emotions, they're messages. Like, they're designed for us to take action. But if we don't know that, then we're not connecting that. We're like, oh, I just feel angry, or, oh, I just feel frustrated or scared or anxious. And it just feels like this free floating thing. And it's not. It tends to be, correlated to situation. There tends to be a connection to situations when we have emotions. So, you know, um, seeing that connection and then figuring out what do we need to do, which normally is functional communication, functional boundaries, functional actions in order to get to kind of maintain our boundaries and to bring peace back into our life. So, but like I said, the good news is I really feel this is hardwired into every single person. It's really not a bunch of stuff you need to learn. It's a bunch of stuff that you need to unlearn. So that can maybe take some of the pressure off too. I think with a lot of these discussions, um, in learning about boundaries and communication, my guess is if you're anything like me, then you're probably having a bunch of aha moments of like, oh yeah, I never thought of it that way, or oh, and it makes sense. And then when you start implementing that, your life starts radically changing. And the good thing is you don't need to implement, you don't have to know it all or even a big chunk of it in order to radically start changing your life for the better. It's even, one or two key insights about connecting your emotions to um, understanding your boundaries and situations around you, changing that or just keying into it can be really game changing right away. So that can be exciting. Okay, let's see. Okay, looks like Kenneth has a question. So let me scroll up. Looks like Jack was talking to him. Kenneth, let me see. Oh, here we go. Kenneth says, Dana, I am 33 years old and am a victim of narcissistic abuse from childhood. I fear I might have borderline personality disorder. What should I do? Well, here's how I look at it, okay? The term personality disorder is terrifying. Nobody wants to have a personality disorder, right? That whole phrase just sounds it sounds like a life sentence. And I'm not wild about that terminology for that reason. I prefer to view personality disorders as kind of imbalances. So it's patterns of it's patterns of behavior that are creating and sustaining an imbalance in your life that are causing problems in your life, whether you're aware of it or not. And it sounds like you're aware of some of it. So the good news with really with anything mental health wise is awareness is such a big part of the treatment and is such a big part of the cure. So with borderline personality disorder, one of the common treatments for it is a therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy. And it's basically mindfulness skills. You can read up on, I would encourage you to read up on it. Um, and it's about getting in touch with your emotions, kind of slowing things down. So there is more of that sense of emotional stability in your life. I've seen I really feel DBT should be taught at kindergarten, like starting in kindergarten, because it's just such a wonderful set of skills that we could all benefit from. So I wouldn't worry so much about the diagnosis as more as getting specific about the behaviors. So if you were to find a therapist, uh, ideally, I would look for one that is certified in DBT, and that has extensive experience with working with people with borderline personality disorder, um, and saying, you know, these are some of the things. This is why I'm seeking therapy. Basically, I've noticed that I have this extreme fear of abandonment, that I tend to run really hot or cold, that there's a lot of anxiety when I get into relationships, that these are the things that are going on. When the more you can talk about behavior, I think the easier, well, frankly, like kind of the less the diagnosis matters, frankly, because you're wanting to learn new skill sets and new ways of coping and um, correcting that imbalance. And if you can find a therapist that's able, if you're going in there, you're like, hey, this is what's going on with me, then that can make things significantly, that can really help, I guess, the outcome. because then they can say, oh, okay, let's explore all of these imbalances that are going on, how long they've been going on, where you think they're coming from, how they're surfacing in your life. And then let's start working on them. And then they'll be able to give you some skills and kind of work towards correcting that imbalance. So I know the diagnosis can be really scary. And you can always tell a therapist that you don't want to know the diagnosis, that you just really want to work on these behaviors too. So I wouldn't, I can see why a person would be scared about getting a diagnosis like that. There's so much misinformation around borderline personality disorder, and it's like anything else that exists on a spectrum. And there's extreme borderline personality disorder behavior, and then there's not so extreme. So it doesn't mean that uh, that it doesn't mean that you're broken or unlovable or difficult or demanding or any of that. It just means that, like the rest of us, that there's some imbalance going on. And it takes a lot of courage to step up and say, you know what, I'm willing to look this straight in the eye and get this resolved. So I would encourage you to do that. Let's see, I missed part of the conversation here. Tim was talking to just me and says, I'd like to emphasize that you don't have to be truthful when you encounter a toxic person. As Richard Grannon says, when dealing with the insincere, you don't have to be sincere. And I would encourage you to be very selective about what you say, because kind of for that reason, you don't owe anybody if a person is dangerous or disruptive or basically dangerous or disruptive or destructive, then it doesn't make sense to be completely transparent with them, especially if doing so is going to potentially open you up for harm. So it's kind of important to know your audience. If this person has a history of being perpetually pot stirring or always playing the victim, or you know what I mean? Like, there's behavior that tends to always be there. Part of that acceptance of it all is realizing this is how they act. This is how they act. It doesn't mean that you have to be okay with it. It just means that you see it for what it is and that you're not expecting things to be any different. You accept it. This is how they act. It might not be how they act in a year from now or 10 years from now, but today, this is how they act. So I am not going to interact with them like that they have functional communication or functional boundaries or, uh, you know, the same wants and needs that you do. That you're going to see that they have their own wants and needs and their own type of communication and boundaries and actions. And when you see that, when you really see the difference there, it can just really set you free, because you just don't get roped into it. It's like Lucy and Charlie Brown playing football. Lucy keeps putting the football down. Charlie Brown runs up to kick it. She pulls it away over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And the only way to stop that is for Charlie Brown to be like, hey, you know what? Like, this is just what she does. And I'm not going to play anymore. So I'm going to just go play a different game. I'm just going to walk on by. That's the only way that we're set free from that. Okay, let's see. Kenneth is saying, I see a lot of borderline personality disorder tendencies in myself. I think it has hurt my marriage and I want to get better. Well, I think it's great that you have, it's difficult, man. It's so difficult. It's difficult for any of us to really own our behavior and to even see it, let alone own it. We all have blind spots to our personality and to the the way we think we come across and the way we do come across are often two very different things. So the fact that you have that level of insight is huge, and it's exciting because not too many people do. So that's a big step in the right direction. And if you are with a partner, that you can have that open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication, it might be worthwhile to sit down and have to start having some of those real conversations with them about uh, certain dynamics that are going on, things that you might have done in the past. And it can be really difficult. I mean, nobody likes uh, being confronted. It tends to always be awkward. It can be really stressful. It can make anybody feel incredibly defensive. So just kind of know that going in. But if you're able to just sit there and be accountable for it, for what you feel that you need to be accountable for, that can go a long way in healing and doing things differently in the future. Dora says, "Hi, Dana. It's been a long time." Hi, it has been a long time. Okay, Kenneth, this is good. He says, "My wife has become afraid of my reactions when she tells me there is a problem. I hate that, and I'm so sorry, and I want to fix it." Okay, so that might be an opening. So it helps um, when we mm, having these real conversations. There's always a degree of discomfort for both people that go into it. So, but it really helps when there's not already another situation, because most people, they don't want to have they don't want they're trying to avoid that discomfort, so they don't want these awkward conversations, so they just avoid them. But then these things tend to surface, and they get worse and worse over time, and then all of um, all the hurt feelings and everything bubbles to the surface during a fight, right? But one or more people have had enough, and then it all comes to the surface. If you can avoid that, if you can be more proactive when things are going well between the two of you, over just when you have time on a Sunday morning, let's say, and approaching her and saying exactly what you said. You know what? Uh, you've you've told me that you become afraid of my reactions when you tell me that there's a problem. This absolutely breaks my heart, and I want to fix this. Um, and then just have that conversation. How asking her, and I guess maybe better identifying the what you're doing that is causing her to have that reaction. Are you becoming loud? Are you becoming intimidating? Are you jumping in to literally try to fix everything, offering a bunch of unwanted advice? Uh, Kind of what is it that she's not liking about your reaction? And then asking her, what would be a good, how would she like for you to handle this? One of the things that I have found, um, and then too, just owning it and trying to see it from her point of view. It's difficult. I think kind of by and large, men by nature are more fixers. Um, and I hate to speak in generalizations like that, but I guess for the sake of generalizations, whereas sometimes women talk about things, talk about problems, and it's just more of venting. So, um, and again, men do this, women do this, both people do this, but it can really help if the other person can let you know if this is an ongoing issue in your relationship, to have them tell you what they're needing. So, for example, um, like I was telling you, there was so much stress and everything when my father was dying, and um, everything was just at this kind of fevered pitch between people. Everybody was just, it was just really stressful, and it was really helpful for people to just come right out and say, uh, you know what? Um, Here's what happened. I forgot to call this one company, and um, I don't need you to fix it. I don't need you to, I don't need to be scolded about it. I just need, I just needed you to know that I forgot to make this phone call, but that I'll do it tomorrow. So sometimes letting people know, for your wife and for you, if she's coming to you with a problem, letting you know ahead of time, you know what? Um, oh man, I have this issue at work. I really want to tell you about it. I just need to vent, and I just need you to listen. And if she can kind of steer you in the direction of what she needs from you, it can make it that much easier. So you're not hopping in thinking like, oh, I want to be her husband. I want to fight her battles. I want to fix the solution. I'm going to, and really she's like, nope, I just need you to listen. And then she might say another time, I could really use your feedback on this, or what have you. The more direction I think any of us can give others for what we need at that time, it just makes everybody's life easier. So I don't know. I don't know if those examples are relevant or not, but that is what comes to mind. Rob says, yeah, that approach worked when I remembered not to be a typical male fixer guy. Yeah. And I do that too. I tend to really jump into the role of fixer, and it's obnoxious and it's unwanted, and it's just not helpful. Most people, it's not appreciated the vast majority of the time. And it can be so hard to break that, especially if we care about somebody and we're like, oh man, um, I don't want you to have this problem, right? Like I love you and I care about you, and I don't want you to have problems. Like I just want your life to be a good one. And then it's hard. It can burn a fixer out if this other person's, if nothing's changing, and then it's stressing us out because now we're taking their problem on as our own, and we've got this problem that's not being resolved, and it feels like it's our problem that's not being resolved. So then that becomes, it's a boundary issue. So it's realizing kind of what we have control over and what we don't have control over, and what's appropriate to have control over and what's not appropriate or helpful to have control over. It can really set us free. So, yeah, Just Me says communication is everything. Yes, yes, it absolutely is. Yeah, Zachary says communication really feels like it's the most important thing. Kenneth says, okay, thank you so much, Dana. That's good examples. I'll put your advice into practice. I'll be curious to know uh, how that goes. And I I wish you guys well, and please report back. I'll be curious if you're comfortable. Let's see here. Jack said, women tend to do this in their own way. I think Dana was saying in a previous live stream with Angie about holding space. Yes. And some people are, you know, better at this than others. I think that tends to be a trait that we associate more with women, but it's not always the case. I think women tend to just talk about things a lot more. So we hold space for each other in that way. But for another person to truly just listen and to empathize and to not jump in and fix and to just reassure and validate, that's rare. That's so rare. And the person that I know that does the best job of that is my brother. So like it's not just a woman thing. Like he just there's just so much that I can learn from him. Like, he just does such a great job of that. I've come across, there's been a few people that I've come across in my life that also just are so, they just approach other people from just a place of love and complete acceptance. And it's just so freeing to have that. They don't need other people to change. My mom has a good friend who's that way. There's like no ego in her approach. She's not bringing her unresolved business into stuff and trying to change other people so she feels better, so she feels a certain way. There's just none of that. It's just, it's a beautiful thing. You'd think it would be so much easier than it is, but it's not. Ah. Zachary asks, Dana, what made you leave psychiatric nursing? Oh, it was a couple of things. I think it really started with feeling like I wanted to do more and seeing, I worked on 2 different teams. And so combined, I had 800 patients with this team of 2 different nurses that I was working with. And they were continually in rotation. So we worked with a lot of people. And seeing how significant trauma was in people's past and how kind of unaddressed that was concerning. And then I read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, and that really just did it for me. I'm like, okay, everything about this makes sense. I really want to get into understanding trauma. So that was probably the catalyst that really I'd been kind of flirting with the idea of exploring counseling for decades, but just kind of, you have your routine, you have what you do, and it was just kind of difficult. So difficult to totally switch gears and go back to college later on in life, So it was that, and just having so many, it was the place I was working at, it just was becoming more and more dangerous working there. We were having more and more situations, and it was just kind of the perfect storm of a lot of things going on all at once that made me realize it's just time. It's just time to go. And I had always been really passionate about emotional health. I'd worked at a domestic violence shelter, gosh, like, what was it, 10, 15 years or so ago. And that was my passion. That was my absolute passion. And I just always I just had always really been drawn to trauma and just, kind of wanting to help people in crisis. And didn't know how that would manifest. I really enjoyed being a psychiatric nurse. I enjoyed being a nurse. I was a hospice nurse before that, did hospice and home care for a while. And so, it just, life is funny that way, how it just kind of unfolds and changes paths. And I started the job that I had when I was a psychiatric nurse. We all had our own offices, and sometime it was really, we either were super busy and didn't get a chance to ever sit down, or we had a lot of downtime, especially on snow days and bad weather days like that, because the vast majority of our patients took the bus and these kinds of things. So anyways, so I had started a blog about Thrive After Abuse. I'd started the website version of this. I was writing articles about it, and I was really trying to make sense of what had happened in my own life, I guess, and sharing my insights and all of that with others along the way. And then more and more people began to find my website, and um, I I don't know, it's just fun. In that, it was just random series of events. I had a friend who had said, um, she's like, "Hey, you should really start a podcast." And at the time, I was like, "Well, I don't know how to do that." And she's like, and I thought, I'll just start a YouTube channel, and was filming videos on my phone, and they haven't gotten that much better over the years, but that is on my list of things to do. Um, and then people just started kind of showing up, and began. I'd always wanted to write books. I'm very much an educator at heart, and a lifelong learner, and I just love all of this. So I love learning about it. I love sharing about it. I love um, hearing the lessons from others and discussing it, and all of it. So yeah, that's that's how that. And then it got to the point where I was doing these live streams. I was trying to run my blog. I was running a really large Facebook group by myself, um, and trying to work full time. And I was so tired and stressed out, and I just thought something's got to give. And then all these other issues at work started coming up, and then it finally made my decision clear. Like, I just have to make the jump um and try to make a living doing this. And thankfully, I was able to do that with book sales, uh, and yeah. So okay, let's see. Oh, well, thank you, Marie, for the live stream donation. She says, "Thank you, Dana, for all you do. Merci." Well, merci beaucoup. Zachary says, "Yeah, thanks for sharing, Dana. It's interesting how we end up where we are." Yeah, it really is. It really is. There's that saying out there that, um, oh, what is it? Like, we make plans and God laughs, kind of a thing. And that's so true. Like, we always think our life is going to go this certain way, and oftentimes it doesn't. And uh, it's just part of the journey of it all, I guess. Oh, well, thank you so much, Kenneth, for the live stream donation. He says, "You deserve this, Dana. I know I don't come to your live streams much, but I spend so much time listening and learning from you. I also refer a lot of people to your channel. Thank you so much for everything." Oh, you are so very welcome. I'm really glad that I could help, and that these conversations, that you're getting so much out of them. Oh, that's an interesting question, Carol. Let me stop the chat here. She says, "Do you think helping people struggling with mental health makes you more resilient? Teaching is safer for me than being a counselor." Hmm. Do I think teaching makes me more resilient? I would say, God, they're so different. They're so different. Uh, in certain ways, it does. There's so much that can be uh, gained, I guess, from both. Um, Teaching, I guess the pros and cons of teaching and helping people in that capacity is, if you like researching different topics, and kind of having a good excuse to do it, it's great, because then you get an excuse to follow all these different rabbit holes and explore topics that you might not otherwise. Uh, it's also less, if you're working with a group, it's less one-on-one, where not the downside, but a challenge with counseling can be what's known as countertransference. So if you're working one-on-one with somebody, or even in family therapy or group therapy, and somebody's sharing something that just hits a little too close to home, that can, I mean, you're continually having to be mindful of your own reactions and responses so you don't kind of put those in the room with you during counseling. So that's an interesting experience, and it can depend on what the counselor has going on in their own life and what um, unresolved stuff that they're aware of that they have. Oftentimes, because like I said, we all have blind spots um, to our issues, and sometimes we don't know if there's an issue there until we're triggered by it. So there's certain counselors that just cannot work with certain uh, certain challenges or certain groups of people because they know that they have certain challenges and they're like, I cannot do that, and they will refer out because they know that's just not going to work for them. So counseling can be a challenge, but both have their own challenges, you know. um, Teaching, helping, I guess the challenge with helping is continually watching the boundary and making sure that it's um, empowering others and not enabling them, or not yeah, I guess not enabling them. And that can be a challenge when it comes to trauma and grief, um, because working with people, even in a support group setting or um, um, on a broader scale, it can be a lot like diffusing a bomb because every single person's different and their needs are going to be different. And so it's it's a challenge when you have a message that you want it to land in a certain way. But right now, I mean, there's 110 people here. And so it's um it used to cause me a lot of anxiety when I first started doing these live streams, because I would get comments of people that had taken certain things I had said in a way that I really did not intend, or a way that I wouldn't have even guessed that they would have taken it. And that I would feel horrible if somebody felt re-victimized or took something in a different way, or that I might have unintentionally set somebody back in their healing. It was just it's the worst feeling ever. So kind of always trying to kind of take the pulse of the community and making sure that my intention, if my message doesn't land okay, that at least my intention does, and that isn't, you're not going to do that 100% of the time. So I don't know. I guess each one has its own challenges, and its own level of reward. I find it really rewarding to have these conversations and to do these live streams and to have the support group. And it's just so cool to be able to um, connect with people from all over the world and to see people kind of wake up to who they really are and to move forward into living a happier, healthier, well-adjusted life. Like that just is the coolest thing ever. So, um, that's really rewarding. Whereas other people that really like one-on-one counseling, like more of that one-on-one connection. They like knowing, kind of keeping tabs with, they like having a limited number of people that they're working with so they can get to know each person at a deeper level and do that. I enjoy that too, but I like, um, I guess, being able to kind of spread as much awareness as possible, to the best of my ability. So, but okay, I didn't know if I answered your question. Sorry, I just read it real quick before I moved on. About resiliency. It teaches what can give you resiliency when you're working with a large number of people is you are continually getting perspective on your own pain, um, perspective
you're getting the influx of other people's aha moments, their insights, their struggles, all of that. And I think that really goes a long way towards building resiliency, because the thing with pain is it can feel, it's a lot like a quicksand, and it can very quickly feel like you're the only one stuck in it and you're the only one suffering and that nobody else can possibly understand. And when you're interacting with this many people with this many, challenges and this much pain on a regular basis, it keeps things into perspective. Um, that has its own challenges, though, I will say, even though I feel like I'm a lot more resilient because I always have perspective every time I turn around. Um, because I interact with so many people and I have been exposed to so much trauma and pain, more so than, you know, um, a person who does one-on-one counseling or does anything in real life, not online. It can kind of be lonely because it's so much pain, and you really start to see the world in clear, all different types of people in the world clearly, and you're just exposed to stuff that you can't unhear. And um, you know, it's hard to sit with that kind of stuff, other people's pain, and to not let that make you become bitter and jaded. And knowing that there's really nobody else that you can, I mean, Angie and I continually talk about that there's very few people out there that that are in the position that we're in. And it's nice to be able for her and I to talk to each other about our own stuff. And when you're trying to also be there for like 50,000 other people, it's a lot to try to juggle. So like anything else, there's pros and cons and challenges to all of it. Let's see. Kenneth is talking about EMDR. He says there's one person locally here who does EMDR and accepts my insurance. That might be, that's one of the recommended therapies for trauma, EMDR. Another one is EFT. It's a tapping, was it emotional freedom technique? It's the tapping these, I don't know, kind of different, I don't know if they're meridians or pressure points or kind of what they are, but that's also a really popular technique for treating trauma. And it also has really great benefits. So might be something worth looking into. Jennifer says, I'm trying to undo my bitterness and jadedness. Yeah. And you know what? Those feelings are very, very real and very valid. And which I think that's kind of part of the trap with them. It can be difficult to get out of them because it's understandable as to why a person would become bitter and jaded when they've been hurt in such a profound way. For me, part of my healing process, what helped with that was realizing, well, I've told this story before. I went to a Thanksgiving dinner at some relative's house. This was, gosh, years ago now, 7, 8 years ago. And there were these older women that were there. I'd never met them before. I'd never met them before, but that's not unusual for my family. Like these people would just pop up and like, oh, this is your aunt so-and-so. And you're like, who? Anyways, so these two women I'd never met before in my life were there for Thanksgiving, and they were family. And they were talking about some event, and they were older. They were in their probably 80s. And talking about some event, and they were so upset about it, and it was so emotionally charged. And my cousins and I, we again did not know who these women were just kind of sitting there. And then we realized that this event had happened like when they were 5. Now, granted, it was a pivotal moment, um, but it was the emotional weight that they had been carrying around for so long was there, and it had really shaped them their whole life. Um, and um, it was it was weird. My cousin and I both, we would look at each other like, "Oh my gosh, this happened a long time ago." And during that dinner, this was shortly after, um, my relationship with the first real prominent, sociopath really in my life ended. I was really struggling with feeling very bitter and jaded and just angry. And I realized, oh my gosh, the old, bitter, jaded women don't start off that way. They tend to start off as, younger, bitter, jaded women who there's unprocessed pain there that just never gets dealt with. And that terrified me. The thought of, oh my gosh, that's if I can't wait for this just to go away on its own. Like I need to actively work at not being bitter and jaded. I guess that was the big takeaway from that dinner. That and um love the lack of communication with my with my family, with whose family. That just really cemented that in my mind of I have no idea what's going on here. But yeah. So I actively began working on not being bitter and jaded and finding happiness in my life and not waiting to just feel better, not waiting for that magical day where I could find joy and peace in my life again. And so I began doing this moment by moment, making these declarations, to myself. I wrote mantras, I had flashcards. I was throwing everything I possibly could at changing my mindset about this because I knew that would be the path that I would go down if I didn't do something pretty radical to intercept it now. And I would tell myself, the best revenge is a good life. Um, I am gonna just I am gonna move forward. I'm gonna be happy. Damn it. Like I'm not gonna let this sink me, because the goodness out like life is not fair, but it's still good. And that's the truth. Life is not fair, but it is still good. And then finding all of the things about this life that are good, that you thankful and grateful. That was, man, that was my way of really finding my power. Um, I am thankful and grateful for clean, hot running water out of a faucet when I turn it on. What a gift. What a time to be alive. Seriously. We have it better now than royalty had it, even, 100 years ago. Um, with medical care and sanitation and everything else. I am thankful and grateful that, um, I have food in the fridge and that I have some money in the bank. I am thankful and grateful that I live in a time and a place that I have opportunity. I am thankful and grateful for the internet, that I'm able to connect with all these different people and learn from them and to just be a part of a movement, really, an awakening. That's so awesome. I'm thankful and grateful for a cell phone. That's just the coolest thing. I'm thankful and grateful that I have a car. I'm thankful and grateful for the health that I do have. All of these little things. To me, that was like these little if bitterness and jadedness were a monster, then that I was trying to fight off, then every time those little kind of prayers or mantras or whatever you want to call them were like little balls of positivity that I had in like a slingshot, and then I was just aiming it at that monster. Like I am thankful and grateful for the health that I do have. I am thankful and grateful that I have a washing machine. I am thankful and grateful that I have, just listing off things. I'm thankful and grateful that I have a brother who is such an amazing person. I am thankful and grateful that, um, I mean, you just keep listing things. And it's amazing how that can really help to balance out that anger. So we reclaim that, we find that balance with time. But again, this isn't to minimize what happened, and it's not to say that um, that anger isn't valid. It absolutely is. It's justified when a person's been abused. But um, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel how you feel, but it becomes a problem when it's consuming you and destroying your life and turning you into somebody that you don't want to be. So you can still work through that anger without it destroying you. And you can still be happy even though you're hurting. You can still be thankful and grateful for things in your life and still be struggling with anger and hurt. We don't have to wait. It's not one or the other. It's not. This was another realization I had. For a long time, I thought that that's what life was, that it was like a roller coaster. There were ups and there were downs. And then I realized it's not so much like a roller coaster, it's more like a train. And it's just going down the track. And it depends on which side of the aisle that you're looking out the window on. On one side, you've got the view of the valley, the trees and everything else. The other side, you've got the tunnel. Which side are you going to look out of? Both sides are there and they're both equally valid. It's just, what are you going to spend most of the time focused on? So I guess, I don't know. Hopefully that'll help somebody. Ah. Yeah, Sam, I agree. He says, I agree that idea is by no means the same as being healthy, like willingly blindfolding ourselves to what's wrong and just drift along with what's accepted and look the other way. Yeah, I came across an article the other day that was talking about mental health, and um, it was a really great article, but one of the things that it was talking about was emotions like anger, guilt, sadness, these kinds of things, and kind of doing more things to just be happy. And the, yes, I mean, that's good, but there's nothing inherently wrong with feeling angry, sad, um, any emotions that we're feeling. If we feel how we feel, and if we've been wronged, it's appropriate to feel angry. If we've experienced loss of some kind, it's appropriate to feel sad. So I really feel like true mental health is experiencing a wide range of emotions and being able to somewhat shift in and out of them, to not just get stuck, in one emotion. That's to me, a better marker of mental health instead of just feeling good all the time. Okay, let's see. Yeah, Rob was saying, yeah, gratitude is so powerful. Yeah, it really is. Sharon said, Dana, can you please help with some advice? Is because the sole reason for the abuse is untreated schizophrenia. It was the best relationship ever, but the person stopped the meds and I persevered for over a year. Yeah, I guess what Um, what advice are you looking for with that? It's heartbreaking and tragic when a person has a mental illness, um, especially schizophrenia or bipolar, and it's they're very different when they are on medication, they're functioning, they're fine, but they're very different when they're off their medication. Um, and it's tragic. It's it's tragic for them, it's tragic for their loved ones, um, especially if they don't have the insight that they're not doing well when they're off of their medication, which, everybody's level of insight varies, even with mental illness. So sometimes people with schizophrenia or bipolar can tell, okay, this is not going good. I need to get back on my medication. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't think that they have a problem, and that's really heartbreaking. Um, yeah, and there's just not a lot. There's It's just really difficult. It's really difficult. So, but I think at the end of the day, healthy boundaries just have to be there regardless. It's not from a place of punishment, it's from a place of self-preservation. And, the added challenge with schizophrenia is kind of depending on how severe. I mean, it's obviously pretty severe if they're becoming abusive, but that can really escalate to a place where it can get very dangerous, very dangerous. And if you're not sharing the same reality with that person, if they're having delusions, if they're, um, having command hallucinations or anything like that, that can just escalate very, very quickly. And they might not, and if they're that ill at that time, there's a solid chance they might not even be aware of what they're doing. So, um, it's just boundaries are for self-preservation. But I can imagine it would be difficult uh, to leave a relationship like that when you're like, wow, this person is so different and so functioning when they're on medication, but they're off their medication. They don't think they have a problem. They won't get back on medication. Um, Depending on what state you live in, um, you can anonymously, if they're really not functional, um, and it's causing harm to them, you can, and again, it just depends on the situation, but you can call the non-emergency police and have them do a welfare check and let them know that this person is not well. And oftentimes that can, um, especially with schizophrenia, it can be exactly what that person needs. If they're not in a place where, if they're not in reality, then odds are they're not taking care of themselves properly. So it just depends on how sick they are, how functional or not functional they are, um, and what kind of where in the world you live as far as what kind of services there are. So, um, oftentimes, if the police can do a welfare check, hopefully they can get that person connected with like a local mental health agency that can help them with a social worker and kind of a treatment team. If they're interested, at least they can make that connection, which can just be an added resource for them. Because what happens with schizophrenia is it tends to make it, if people that are um, when they have when they're so different off of medication that they become, belligerent, hostile, abusive, difficult, argumentative, like these kinds of things. Such a major personality, defiant, major personality changes. They tend to just run the cycle of uh, being at home, being in jail, being in the emergency room, and it's just over and over and over and over and over again. So until they either are court ordered to be on medication, or something changes. It's beyond tragic, and I wish that there was more fail safes in this system for people to get the treatment that they need. And I wish there was more training for kind of first responders for situations like that. Again, it depends on where you live. I feel we're very fortunate here, at least where I live in Michigan, that there's a lot of training for our police when it comes to mental health, and we very rarely had an issue. It tended to really run beautifully, but it just depends. Okay, let me scroll up here. Oh, well, good for you, Martha. She says, I've been doing so well setting boundaries. I do have to say, I work on it constantly, and I've had a lot of peace and serenity in my life because of it. That is awesome. Congratulations. Mm, interesting. Rob says, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what happened to a childhood neighbor friend of mine. The family asked for a donation to mental health services instead of flowers for the funeral. Yeah, it's there's just a real need out there. There's such a stigma, so many stigmas against all facets of mental health, and it really prevents people from getting the adequate treatment that they need. And a lot of it, uh, the stigmas have to do with these diagnoses feel like a life sentence. And people don't know, I mean, nobody wants to have schizophrenia. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with patients over the years where they don't want to take their medication. They think they're going to be fine without it. And because they're doing fine now. And what if they don't really have schizophrenia or bipolar? What if it was just situational? And I get it. I get it. It's understandable that nobody would want to be on medication the rest of their life. But so a lot of people go on and off medication, and it's just it's tragic. So I should have added to the cycle with a lot of people with schizophrenia is I was saying emergency room and jail. It's also psychiatric hospitals. So that's another big part of that cycle, just round and round. We had a gal in our support group who her boyfriend had paranoid schizophrenia, and they had this great relationship, but he was either off of his medication or had just been recently diagnosed with it, but was delusional, and having these kind of command hallucinations, auditory and hallucinations, and just delusional, thinking that these beliefs that they would he would leave the planet, and that it was going to be a good thing, and kind of just he wasn't a violent guy, but he wasn't sharing the same reality. And so he just got it in his mind that this world wasn't real, and that this isn't where him and his girlfriend needed to go, and that they needed to transcend and to get off of this planet. And he killed his girlfriend while she was sleeping, and he thought he was setting her free. And it's beyond tragic, you know, to it's on in so many ways, it's just beyond tragic. So this is why boundaries are so important. It's not about um, not being compassionate for somebody else, or we can still try to be there for other people, but it's got to be in a way that's safe for us. And if you're not sharing the same reality with somebody, and if they're having erratic, unpredictable, or violent behavior, you would really be wise to get some distance. And that's not to say, that that people with schizophrenia are violent or dangerous. The vast majority of the time they're not. But the thing with unpredictable behavior and delusions and things like that is you just don't know where a person's thinking is. And it can vary because it's not rational. It can very quickly go to a place that you don't expect it to go to. So that's just the point that I wanted to make. Really, that's with any type of like delusional or kind of psychosis. You just don't know. So, okay. Let me scroll up here. That's so cool, Martha. She says, I literally am hyper aware of when I need to set a boundary, and I do it almost always. And it's been a game changer for me. Thank you. That is so very, very cool. Jennifer says, I just want to break the trauma bonds and be happy, truly happy for the first time in my 43 years of living. Oh, Jennifer, I'll tell you something here about the happiness part. Is it's a process, it's not an event. So it's moment by moment, and it's consciously choosing moment by moment to do things that bring you closer to happiness. So often, so I set my timer that tonight, I remembered. So often people, they wait, like we were talking about earlier, they wait until they feel they feel numb. They feel numb or they feel angry, and then they just kind of wait. Well, someday down the road, I won't feel angry, and then I'll start living my life. Or someday I will feel uh, attractive or comfortable in my body. But then that day never comes because it's not because it's not an event, it's a process, and that process happens with consciously choosing to act in accordance with that in small ways on a regular basis. So that happiness, don't wait until you feel healed to start allowing happiness in. You can making a list of things now, and noticing, this is a big part of it too, noticing when you're doing things that are enjoyable. So it doesn't have to be an event. Like, okay, you know what really makes me happy is I don't know, cooking at some sort of big event, right? Like having a dinner party or going on vacation. Those are great, but thinking about ways that you can bring enjoyment in small ways throughout your day. Splurging on, um, I don't know if you drink coffee at home, but splurging on getting the kind of like a really nice, I don't know, coffee of the month kind of a thing. So you're spending more money on your coffee. That's just your little indulgence. Oh, that's such a nice treat. Or shutting your door when you're on break for lunch. So you're just not interrupted. And so you're listening, you're indulging in your favorite, I don't know, trash TV or trash YouTube or whatever it is. Doing little things that you enjoy, turning in at night 20 minutes early and just allowing it to be your time where you just kind of tuck into a good book or things like that, and really noticing, oh, this is just so enjoyable. Investing in a good set of sheets, that is huge, huge. These little things, they just make a difference. So quality time with other people, with the friends, the supportive people in your life that you do have. And when you start doing these things on a more regular basis, then one day you start to kind of wake up and you're like, I'm living a life that I love. Like, when did this happen? And you won't even really notice when it happened, but you'll notice that it did happen, if that makes sense. It's strange. So day by day, moment by moment. The good thing about this is something that you can start doing now. You don't have to wait. I mean, you can start noticing these are certain things that you enjoy. You can do something that you enjoy tonight. And it's kind of it can be a good journaling exercise too. Trying to list out 100 different things that you enjoy and getting really clear on it. Because I'll tell you, that trauma and that pain and that anger and that bitterness, like I was saying earlier, it really does feel like a bog of quicksand. And it's amazing how much it can just cause tunnel vision, where all you can see is that pain. And you're like, oh, I don't know. I don't enjoy anything. I don't like anything. I don't like anyone. And it can be really difficult to start climbing out of that dark hole of figuring out, what do you enjoy? It's there. It's just, it's dark because of all the pain. But you can start by listing these things and reminding yourself. And it does help. Okay, well, yeah, a lot of it is Carol was saying, yeah, Dana, it's a good idea. 100-item happy bank to counter the bad days. Yeah, and just to remind yourself, life's not fair, but it is still good. It is still good. It really, truly is. We are so outrageously fortunate that we live in the time and the place that we do. So it can help to just remind ourselves of the little things that do make life enjoyable. A good cup of coffee or a good cup of tea, or a sunrise or a sunset, or staying up late and watching a movie, or going to bed early, or having lunch with a good friend, or taking time to write, or um, just hanging out in your pajamas, whatever it is that makes you're like, man, this is so enjoyable. Like, this is just so nice. To, going for a run, playing with your pet, all of these things make life, these are the things that make life worth living. So with that said, I guess we should wind down and do our kind of guided meditation for the night. I'm going to get some water here real quick. So take a moment, find a comfortable spot. If you're sitting down or laying down, whatever it might be. And just allow yourself to be fully present in this moment.
Taking a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Realizing that this is your time and that right now you've got so much time, plenty of time. There's nowhere else you need to be and nothing to do except just take some time to unwind. Taking another deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Bringing your attention into your body, turning it inward, bringing your attention down into your feet, your legs, your hips, your torso, your shoulders and your arms, your neck and your head. Feeling your body rise and fall effortlessly with each breath. Being fully present in this moment. Realizing that even though life is not fair, that there's still so much about it that is good. And acknowledging that every single cell in your body is so joyously busy regenerating itself and repairing itself. That you are healing on a cellular level in so many ways every single moment of every single day. Thinking and taking time to be thankful and grateful for all that our body does without us having to think about it or plan for it or any of that. It just does what it knows it needs to do. All of these wonderful, amazing functions are going on in your body, all working towards your highest and greatest good. Feeling what it feels like to be fully present in your body. Feeling the buzz of all that positive healing energy as it just pulsates throughout your body. And bringing that wonderful healing oxygen in with each inhale. And exhaling stress, anxiety, and pain. Watching your body rise and fall with each inhale and each exhale. Allowing yourself to feel comfortable and safe in your own body. And you are capable, you are strong, you are resilient, you are powerful, you are healing. There is so much that is right with you and that is going well in your life. There really, really is. And continuing to breathe. Allowing yourself to continue to settle in, settling into this present moment and into your body. Taking some time now for all little things and the big things that you're thankful and grateful for. And I would encourage you to come up with, let's say, 15. So we're going to take 15 breaths right now. Come up with 15 different things that you're thankful and grateful for. And when you're ready, bring your attention back to this present moment. Go ahead and open your eyes. bringing with you that sense of peace and thankfulness and gratitude into this present moment. So thank you guys so much for being here tonight. And as the last Spartan says, we are survivors. Absolutely. We are warriors. You are courageous. You are strong. You are capable. There is so much that is right with you guys. There really, really is. So, with that said, just as always, lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So, take care, and I will see you guys next week. Good night.